This year, we mark a key centenary in British life, 100 years since the end of the Great War. We've also marked a second and connected centenary, 100 years since women were given the right to vote. In fact, let me correct that. 100 years since some women were given the right to vote, namely those over the age of 30 who owned property. The second, the social reform, arose partly out of the First World War and expanded the role women took on the home front, especially within industry, with so many men away on active service. After women proved so capable across so many disciplines, the campaign for expanding our political rights became unstoppable. But it took another 10 years before the right to vote was extended to almost all women over the age of 21, and on the same basis as men. That didn't happen until 1928. Now, in absolute terms, 90 years is a long time, clearly. But in the span of our island story, it is little more than the blink of an eye. So do not make the mistake of thinking that gender equality before the law and across society can be taken for granted. It cannot be. And do not forget that other key steps towards equality between the sexes are much more recent than the right to vote. There would be women in this hall today who remember having to seek a male guarantor in order to get a mortgage, a result of discrimination within the workplace that left most women locked out of secure, well-remunerated employment, and that didn't change until the 1970s. My generation of women were the first to benefit from female emancipation in so many areas, from the Equal Pay Act to contraception on demand, from the opening up of the profession to the rise of the female entrepreneur. I can look at you all today and say with confidence that women in this country in general have never had it so good when it comes to the career opportunities, financial rights, civil rights, and the rest of it. In our universities, women outnumber men among undergraduate students. The same is true in teaching, in general medical practice, and a host of other professions and occupations. Girls in general are outperforming boys in school exams too. While a proportion of MPs who are women is only around a third, it is rising from one parliament to the next, and long gone are the days when television coverage only showed a sea of men in suits. In the traditionally male preserve of sport, female elite performers are now every bit as celebrated as male ones. At Wimbledon, the women's singles winner wins as big a prize as the men's. And no doubt some in the audience will note that despite playing 3-set matches against the 5 that the chaps play. The fastest growing sport in this country, women's football. Once the butt of stupid jokes, but shirt swapping at final whistle time now commands a rapidly growing attendance and with full-time professionals. But again, this is all very recent. For instance, take a look at the schedule of the women's events in Olympic athletics in the 1972 Games. The longest distance running event for women was the 1,500 metres. The women's Olympic marathon was first run as recently as the 1984 Los Angeles Games. The women's pole vault did not become an Olympic event until the Sydney Games of the year 2000. Perhaps it was assumed that a woman would simply not be strong enough to do it. Wrong. There are still rightly concerns about glass ceilings, particularly in respect of the lack of female participation on the boards of major companies. There's also the issue of the gender pay gap. Though the Equal Pay Act ensures parity of pay for work of equal value, and I do not believe that politicians should be directing couples as to which of them takes primary responsibility for child rearing and which is for breadwinning. That surely is something families decide for themselves. But while we must push the boundaries and police them as well, there does come a time when we need to take a step back and survey the overall scene, when we should ask how many of these new rights, and how many old ones too, are just theoretical to some women in our country. With mass immigration, we saw from the second half of the 20th century onwards, we brought into our country some people from all kinds of different societies with different traditions, different attitudes towards many questions, including the status of the rights of women. And in some cases, these traditions and attitudes were inferior to our own. With our political establishment's approach of crude multiculturalism, we've all too often encouraged new communities to carry on behaving exactly as if they were still in their countries of origin, rather than to adopt to the ways of their country of adoption, the country they proudly chose to make a new life in. So it pains me to say there are many women, some of them indeed, living in this great city of Birmingham, within just a few miles of this hall, for whom the first part of my speech about great liberties and freedoms accorded to British women over recent decades may as well have been addressed to inhabitants of another planet. These are women who are growing up and living in a deeply socially conservative, male-dominated communities, who are not permitted to go out in public showing their faces, who are not permitted to choose a life partner, who are instructed who to vote for on their postal ballot if they are fortunate enough to see it at all, and who may have been subjected in adolescence to the horrors of female genital mutilation. Let's be honest about this, even if honesty is uncomfortable. They are living in a pre-emancipated state, with a status often below that accorded to women in our country, even in those days before the vote was given to the female middle class a century ago. The ultra-liberal, ultra-politically correct Westminster class, proven incapable of creating a legal framework which can point to even one successful FGM prosecution. Police forces are failing to get to grips with honour violence. We even have political parties which claim to be mainstream and yet segregate their political meetings by gender. Then there are the establishment figures who first denied and then turned a blind eye to organised grooming and then the rape of vulnerable working-class white girls by thousands of Pakistani heritage men. Fortunately, there are public figures with the courage to speak up about these issues. People as eminent in the field of race relations as Trevor Phillips, hardly a right-wing bigot, I think you'll agree. He warned about the dangers of segregated parallel communities springing up where fundamental British values and rights simply do not apply. And yet, woe betide the politician who seeks to challenge this. We all saw how the media treated Paul Nuttall in 2017, when he put forward an integrated agenda which included the suggestion of full-face coverings being banned in public places. He was accused of everything under the sun, despite opinion polls showing that most people outside the Westminster bubble actually agree with him. And it's got worse since then. In 2018, Boris Johnson has been similarly demonised, not even for backing a ban on the full-face coverings, even though countries like France, Belgium, Denmark have brought them in. No, Boris just wrote an article opposing such a ban. For that, he was accused of being a racist, a fascist, of inciting hatred against Muslim women, and even subjected to formal disciplinary proceedings by his own party. Whatever happened to free speech? I don't know. The rights we as women have should be equal to the rights of men, but we must also focus making sure our formal rights are real rights for every woman. And that means every woman from every ethnic class background. They must have a chance to achieve their full potential in life and to make her fullest contribution towards our society. And it is in the latter aspect that massive disparities still exist. Now, I want to conclude by saying a few words about the man who took the leadership of UKIP earlier this year in what I think you will all agree were pretty difficult circumstances. Naturally, not everyone in the party agrees with all Gerard Batten's views on every subject, but everyone should respect the sincerity, the calmness in which his views are communicated. Gerard, you didn't have to step up to the plate. You didn't have to put yourself in line for a whole load of extra work and a whole heap of extra grief, but you did so uncomplainingly. You have brought order where there was chaos. You've stabilised the party financially, and you've increased membership and also begun the process of our recovery in the opinion polls, and in doing so, quietened those critics of our party who said it was just a one-man band. In short, you played a blinder. We're not just still on the pitch. We've started scoring goals again. We're back nipping at the heels of the Lib Dems in the polls, just as we'd been back in 2012. In the run-up to the Corbyn by-election, which I seem to recall relegating the Liberals to 4th place, with a lot of help from plenty of you people in this hall, I hasten to add. On the issues of excessive foreign aid, excessive political correctness, excessive immigration, and the need to toughen up law and order where many senior police officers have lost the plot. It is once again UKIP that is making the arguments that so many people wish to hear. And of course, people know that our party, what we really stand for. And so many people know we wish to take back governance for our own country. And we must do so outside of the European Union. We're never going to be fashionable among the media elite. If we were, well, I, for one, would be questioning we must be doing something wrong. But instead, we're earning the quiet respect of huge numbers of ordinary, decent citizens for having the courage to stand up against fashionable idiocies. And to all in the punditry class who have performed the last rites over UKIP more times than most of us have had hot dinners, I say this to you: you got it wrong again. Under Gerard Batten, UKIP is back, and we have the wind in our sails, and we're going to be stronger than ever. Conference, we have 6 months away from Brexit. Now is the time for us to rally together and to fight to deliver the Brexit that so many people voted for in this country. So let's go and get them, and let's deliver Brexit. Thank you.